Stephen Silvagni, he's been list manager since he hung up the boots. No, he's not. He was a coach first, then he became a list manager. He's been in this space. No one knows the space better. No one can put a deal together better than this man.
No one.
And it's been 12 months since we sat in this studio that we've seen Sausage, because he then goes into a hibernation style setup, studying and working hard, and he's back again for another year. Hello, Sauce.
Gaz, how are you, Timmy?
Nice to see you. Do you want to ask him the question you asked off here?
What was that? Who's going to coach Essendon?
Yeah.
I got no idea.
No idea.
I don't know. They're down to the. They said that they would have an answer by the end of the week, so they must be down to the very, very pointy end of it all.
There'll be an Essendon coach in place by the end of the week.
That's what I've been told. Yeah.
Oh, I've buried the lead there.
No, that's
right?
been reported.
Oh, I got some stuff out of you yesterday that hadn't been reported. I'm slowly...
You never get stuff out of me that I don't want to reveal.
Unravelling. Hey, lots of questions are coming through. You excited about this trade period?
Yeah, plenty should happen. Obviously, last year was I'd say a little bit of a dull trade period, not a lot of activity, but just so many big names that want to sort of leave clubs, and obviously De Goey's one of them, how they get that deal done. Jackson to Freo, how that's going to happen. So, and just the fallout, who won't get traded and who's going to be dropped off lists.
How quickly, because we know how this hasn't even started yet, with free agency starts on Friday. How quickly will we see some of these, with the Jackson thing's been in play now for long enough that, Freo must have, or West Coast, but we suspect Freo have got some idea of how this happens. How quickly will these things come together?
I think from a free agent's perspective, I think generally they get done relatively quickly, knowing you sort of have an idea of what compensation you may get out of that. So the Carl Amon one, pretty much I think will get probably done straight away. The De Goey one's an interesting one, how that's played out. Obviously that clause is creating a bit of an issue. Who's going to give on that, whether they will or they won't. So I'd keep an eye on that one, because that's not as simple as I think everyone thinks it's going to be.
I'll drill down on that, but you mentioned Carl Amon. So this, the player's interesting. He's nominated Hawthorn, but the compensation, you say that the compensation, which is not hard and fast, it's a bit more subjective. Every year we say the same thing. How do we determine the compensation for someone like Carl Amon, he's a nice player. He's a walk-up start for Hawthorn when they get him. He's a nice player for Port Adelaide on the wing. Is he a first-rounder?
Well, it probably gets back to what the earn is and the term of the contract. There's a lot more to it. My understanding is it's not just the earn and the term.
So you mean the offer from Hawthorn?
Correct. So, if Hawthorn was to offer him, and I'm just going to pick a figure here, let's say 800,000, it's by 5 years.
Yeah. Yep.
I would think they'd get a first-round draft pick compensation for that. If it's 650, you're probably looking somewhere 600, probably in the second round. But that just doesn't determine it. My understanding is it gets back to what that player has achieved as well, whether he's won Best and Fairest or Australians, where he was selected, his age comes into consideration. So my understanding is there's a whole lot of factors that come into consideration when they give a compensation.
Should the AFL tell us? Or is it too hard?
Well, I guess it gives them a little bit of flexibility.
A little,
so it's been interesting over time to what has been given out. But look, as a list manager, you'd like to know, knowing what you're going to get, pretty much when you get that offer through.
How quickly do you think the Richmond GWS deals will get done? How quickly will those two deals, Hopper and Taranto, or is that going to be one of those ones that go right up to the finish line?
Look, generally the Giants, they bargain hard.
They do.
Or negotiate hard, but they generally get them done. My feel is that there's probably a really good relationship between those two clubs. I think Kingsley, having been at Richmond with Hardwick, I reckon they'll get that done fairly quickly.
Give us your take on De Goey and the behavioural, given that you've written thousands of contracts. How does this all work?
Look, my view on the De Goey situation was 12 months ago, I think Jordan De Goey would have taken what's on the table from Collingwood then and then. I think there's been a big shift in terms of his performance, particularly over the finals. So I'll ask you a question, Gaz. Just as it sort of stands right at the minute, if Jordan De Goey was not a free agent, just out of contract, what would a club give? What's he worth in terms of a draft pick?
First round, early.
Early first round. So it's really interesting. So I read an article today, the possibility of, because they've got McStay coming in and he's a free agent, and if they don't
lose their compensation.
They lose their compensation, but they can actually do a trade for McStay.
Yep.
Okay, so they can do that. But the issue is okay, they let DeGoey go as a free agent. They probably get a pick at pick 15, 16, which blows out to 18, 19 after the father-sons. Is that a good value for Jordan DeGoey? It's unders.
It's not. No.
But that's also determined where you finish.
Correct.
So I always used to laugh at this because people go, oh, well, Buddy, the compensation pick for Buddy was 19. Yeah, because you won the flag or you're at the finish at the top. The compensation pick is a first-round pick after your first-round pick. So if you finish on the bottom, it's 2.
That's correct.
So it's consistent.
Yeah.
So you got to weigh that up.
No, you do. So you look at the bargaining here between Collingwood and also the DeGoey camp. Now, should Collingwood not be happy with that compensation pick, they can match that bid, right? So whatever a St Kilda or a Sydney have offered Jordan DeGoey, they can match it and then basically go out and say, okay, if DeGoey wants to stay, which he may, this is the card they may play.
Yeah.
So, well, listen, you've matched it. Beautiful. No problem. No clause in the contract. I'm staying.
Yeah.
What about Luke Jackson? How does that get done?
Yeah, interesting one. They've got a bit happening. Obviously, the Demons want 2 first-round picks inside 10, so they haven't got those. So, but they've got a bit going out. I mean, they've got Lobb and they've got Tucker.
Will they do Lobb? So on that point on Lobb, they've said that Lobb is a required player. Will they deal him for the right deal?
I think they will.
Yeah.
I think they will. I mean, it's their second year that sort of Lobb wants to get out of there, and I think for them to get that deal done, he's probably going to have to move on.
Yep.
So they'll then eventually get that done. I think Freo in a reasonable good position here purely because they've got West Coast sitting at pick 2. They can use that pick. Whatever, if they can't get a deal done, Melbourne aren't just going to let Luke Jackson go for nothing. So they've got to get a deal done. So I'm confident that that'll happen.
Yeah. So you would suspect if you're a betting man, it'll be a top 10 pick, you'd hope, and then maybe a future first round or something along those lines.
Yeah, you can only deal with what's in your hands.
Yeah.
I mean, if Freo have got pick 11 and pick 18 or a future first, well, that's all they've got. They can top up a little bit back end, do some swapping of picks or whatever it may be, but I'm confident that deal will get done.
So are you saying West Coast won't be able to get into this deal?
They can be sitting
They've
there.
got a better hand, but...
Yeah, I think Freo's going to be the deal. That Freo's going to get it done, but whilst West Coast is sitting there with pick 2, both in the national and pre-season
Freo's hand a bit.
it forces Freo's hand a bit.
Yeah.
Carlton need a ruckman. Should they jump into the Grundy situation? That's come off the tempered text from Jim Dimmitt.
Yeah, well, I think look, I really like Grundy as a player. I mean, when he's fit and up and going, like he's a top 2-3 ruckman in the competition. So I guess the big thing that I think Carlton have to wrestle with, they've got Tom De Koning sort of sitting there who needs to play games. He played a number of games this year. He played some really good footy. So they probably see him as the number 1 ruckman down the track. So by bringing in Grundy, does that stifle his development? But certainly, I'm sure his name would have come across the table.
How's it going to work at Melbourne? How's the Grundy Gorn going to work at Melbourne?
Yeah, interesting one. Because one of them's going to have to play, forward for quite a bit of time, and does that one of the excuse me one of the things about Melbourne, their forward pressure sort of dropped off. We saw that with Wiedemann and also Ben Brown. Now, can Grundy and Gorn be able to do that? So no, it's an interesting one. But the game evolves. Someone does something out of left field, and all of a sudden
that's
they go.
The point. I think there you've hit on the nail right there. Is because I'm just Melbourne supporter, so I'm going, how does this going to work? I think it opens a door for something really imaginative for Melbourne to go to work on and go, okay, we've got these 2 players, this is their capabilities. Just because the history and the convention says he has to play here and that means he plays there, hey, maybe they're going to shake the whole damn thing up.
Well, I think too, Tim and Gaz, there is some talk about 5 players being on the interchange bench next year. So a club's going to play 2 ruckmen. Are they going to go with 1 with a pinch hit ruckman? Are they going to play pretty much 5 running players on the bench. So they're all the things that clubs would be having conversations about, and whether the 2 ruckman is the way to go.
Well, if they looked at Geelong last weekend, they might be thinking that's the way to go.
Yeah.
Try and get the 2 most athletic blokes you can possibly get out there on the park together and just run the opposition ragged.
Yep.
Josh Jenkins, the mastermind behind that.
I think he was.
Yep, that's what he's written down here. Trade Radio is live for Tyre Power, Australia's biggest independent tyre retailer, keeping you safe on the roads, tyrepower.com.au. You like Gunston to the Brisbane Lions?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I think
sense.
that I mean, even with McStay going out, gives them another avenue up forward.
Is that deal going to be easy to get done then? If he says, okay, I want to go to Brisbane.
Yeah, I think that'll.
What would satisfy? Is that like a second round,
Maybe.
early third round pick?
Possibly, or maybe even look. Often we look at a pick, and it depends on what Hawthorn want. I mean, last year they wanted picks; they may still want picks this year. Sometimes it can just be a shuffling of picks, you know.
Yeah.
So whether it's just a straight second round, third round pick, or whether they can slide up into the first round.
Tim, as we went to the break, asked about Joel Selwood. Now, we've studiously and for good reason ignored the debate about whether or not he would retire. Just, there's only one man that will determine whether he does or he doesn't. But if he was to make that decision, there wouldn't be a footy club I don't think there's an organisation in this country that wouldn't be clamouring for his services, given how highly held he is right now.
Yeah, super career, and the way he finished off on the weekend, he just ticked every box. So if he does decide to give it away, what a way to step away from the game as a player.
If he came to you and said, okay, I'm going to retire, I want to get into football club land, I'm not quite sure what I want to do, I might want to be a recruiter or a general manager, I might want to do CEO, whatever it might be, but I might want to be a coach. Would you advise him, knowing what you do about the game, would you advise him to move out of Geelong's system and go somewhere else and experience another system?
I probably would. The thing about Geelong, I think Geelong are a really good club, and they direct their players and massage their players in career-wise the right way. So Geelong would know what is the best, as much as they would love to keep him, and that might be the case, but they would help him make that decision. What's the right decision for Joel Selwood? So, as you said, there would be pretty much every club in the AFL that would obviously pick up the phone and have a chat to him. And then it's about Joel saying, well, what influence do you want to have at what club? What's the best fit if he wanted to go down that road to coach? Who do you want to learn under? Which club would you really like to help? Where do you see the list that might have a talented list right at the moment, but you may be seeing things that you can actually influence with your ability to hand on what you've learnt at Geelong.
I can't imagine him leaving Geelong. And
I can't either.
This is whether he doesn't play. He may choose to play on, but right now there's like to go and just. Now, when I say just be an assistant, he's got more. He seems to be of a higher standing than that, you know. But I guess.
Where are you thinking? Maybe
I think
in the business world.
I think he'd just stay in Geelong. He's built a massive house in Bowen Heads. He's that well ensconced. He could be the mayor. He could be the prime minister. The way he's going, it's just a speculation. Every club would want to tap into his, the way he's able to lead.
Yeah.
I just can't see him going and leaving Geelong.
It just gets back to what his passion is after footy.
And his curiosity too to better himself and learn. And where do you go to do that in the AFL? Like, you've been in one of the best systems there is and has been created over the last 50 years at the Geelong Footy Club. Where could you go where you're going to be able to improve your knowledge base around the game? I mean, which club would you identify to do that at?
Yeah, and it mightn't be club. It might be straight into the AFL.
Well, okay. Well, that's another thought. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you were the Giants, if you got James Hird in as a consultant, then trying to establish a club which you were a part of, or the Gold Coast Suns that are trying to establish the club, you could fast track 10 years.
Yeah.
By just going and spending, a day a week or, 3 days a month or something along those, just sitting there, casting his eye over it, talking to their leadership group, talking to the young blokes about what's important. No end to what he can do.
That, and I just had a thought now, but even if they bring the Tasmania team, I mean, imagine him being part of that to be able to attract players and that type.
I think he'll do whatever he wants, and that's the beauty of where he's at.